Today in this video, I would like to share how we can test electrolytic capacitor with digital multimeter and analog multimeter. So I have a few value of electrolytic capacitor, and all these electrolytic capacitor are there is a polarity. One side is negative and the other side is positive. So the longer pins always is positive and the shorter pins is always negative. Otherwise, you can check in the body, all this the label is for the negative, stand for negative, and the other side, all this side is positive, which means for the negative side they will always put either is white, on depends on the brand, either is this white or gold color. So they will be always label for the negative signs. So all this side is for the negative, and we can simply identify the positive pin always is long and the negative pin always is for the short. So just like LED also, the longer pin is positive and the shorter pin is negative. So this is what we call electrolytic capacitor. So this topic here is to test capacitor. So my multimeter, I need to check either this multimeter can check capacitor or not. So here my multimeter, I need to see around here. This area is to testing the DC voltage, and this area is for testing AC voltage, and this area is for testing DC ampere, and this also for DC 10 ampere. And then here is for transistor, and here is for the diode, and this is for resistor. So this multimeter, we cannot test capacitor. So we cannot test this capacitor with this multimeter. There are a lot of multimeter model and a lot of multimeter brands. So if you want to check capacitor, you must choose which we can measure the capacitor. So we cannot use this multimeter. So I have another types of digital multimeter here. So again, I need to check my multimeter either can test capacitor or not. So here I need to see, here is for AC voltage, and here is for DC voltage, here is for millivolt, and here is for DC millivolt, and here is for ohms. So ohms or diode testing mode, and if you select one more times, there is for continuity testing mode, and number 3 here is for capacitor testing mode. So this symbol is stand for capacitor. So this multimeter can test capacitor. So I already select my multimeter here. I'm going to test this capacitor. If you want to try to test capacitor from your old PCB board, you must remove from the PCB board. We must completely desolder and remove from the board, and only we can test our capacitor. Otherwise, you will not get the correct value and your multimeter can be damaged. And this side is negative and this side is positive. So before you testing, we have to discharge. Discharge means positive and negative pin will just short together, and if in case your capacitor is already supplied, especially for the old capacitor, we must discharge, and then we can place negative for the black lead, positive for the red lead here. So we see on multimeter 97.3. so either is less 5% or more 5%. So basically either is less 5%. So this is 100 microfarad and this capacitor 35 volt 220 UF. So to testing capacitor is we can test the UF the important is the UF, this is the energy storage, and 35 voltage, which means this is the maximum voltage you can supply for this capacitor. So discharge and negative here and positive. So I should get 220. Alright, so this is 232. 232. So this is more. And here this is the big size, 1000 UF and 25 volt. So we discharge. This side is negative and this side is positive. So I cannot get this value from this multimeter. So sometimes the value is 1000 UF and the reading will be either is less 1000 UF or less 5% or more 5%. So my multimeter, this model, we can read only maximum 1000. So if your capacitor is more than 1000 UF, then you will not get the value. You cannot read the value from this multimeter. Because my multimeter only can read maximum 1000 UF, so you must check your multimeter is either can test capacitor until how many value. So all the small range I can read here. So very simple. So as long as you already understand how we can test capacitor, then you can follow up to buy the more capacitor testing value multimeter. So this is 220 UF. So I get 214. So this capacitor is good. So this is how you can test capacitor with this multimeter. Alright, so we stick to analog multimeter. So if I use analog multimeter, I need to check my multimeter can test capacitor or not. So this range is for the DC voltage, here is for the AC voltage, here is for the buzzer, here is for the ohm scale, here is for micro DC ampere. So there is no capacitor testing range on this multimeter, but analog multimeter, the good things about analog multimeter is you can identify simply the capacitor is either still working or not work. But we cannot check the value of this capacitor. Either your capacitor is still can charge, still can store energy or not. So you simply select like times 100 or times 1K and you discharge capacitor. So negative is the black lead and positive is the red lead. So you can identify here your capacitor is still can charge. So still can charge means the needle is moved up and will first to down. When the needle is up, by the time the capacitor is charged, the capacitor energy is already stored. When the needle is coming down, the capacitor energy stored is already full, then the needle is already drawn back. Because capacitor is the same like battery, but this will store energy for a while. So again here, there is another capacitor, always discharge. So negative is the black here, positive is the red. So we charge. So this capacitor is good. One more time. So the second time will be only a little bit we charge because the energy is already stored inside here. So this is good. So we cannot check this capacitor, the inside capacitance. So here is 220 UF. this is how you can identify electrolytic capacitor with digital multimeter and analog multimeter.